logged in as some user into the system. If I want, I don't know which SAP system is running on this system. Okay, so if I want to find, you have to navigate to USR SAP, USR/SAP. So if you see here, there will be just look at the 3 characters folder names: DAA, SOD, SOJ. So these are the SAP systems installed on this host. This is one way to find out if you don't know the which SID is running on this system. So once you have like SOD, then you can switch to that particular admin user. Okay. Like there, how to find out which user you are logged in? Maybe there's a command called who am I. You type this command, it will tell which user you are logged in as. Okay. So we want to look at the what is mount points and directory structure, right? Okay. See, in Windows, if you open my computer, okay, I'll tell you. I'll just take the analogy of Windows. So Windows in my laptop, I have one hard drive. So hard drive space is like I have 500 GB hard drive I have in my laptop. So here the case is I using C partition for entire 500 GB. So this is one case. Entire space is allocated to C drive. If I want to have like 2 drives in my, so what I can do is I can distribute like C drive 200 GB, D drive 200 GB, and E drive I can have it like 100 GB. So you would be seeing 3 drives in here. So once I start using it, okay, for me still I don't find enough space. Like I used like 500 every 500 GB. What I can do is then I can attach one more, add one hard drive, or like 500 GB. Then I can create one more disk. Maybe I use this 500 GB for this F drive. So that is how we do it in Windows. So on server, on laptop we call it as a hard drive. On server test we call it as a disk. So the same concept applies. When you want to install SAP on a Windows server, what they do is like their one disk is not enough. So what they do is they add like 2-3 disks they have in Windows server. They'll add like maybe like 3 into 3 500 GB hard disk they will be attaching. So once so we have total of 1.5 TB, and they will distribute this space between C drive, D drive. Maybe they can distribute like C drive 500 GB, and D drive they can distribute like have like 1 TB, something like that. That can be distributed. We can go to this disk management in Windows, and we can check that. We can log into one Windows server. So if you go to this, open this disk management in Windows, we can see how many disks are attached, what are the size of each disk, and how it is partitioned. Here, like this disk is allocated to C drive completely, and this disk is allocated to D drive completely. You can even have like multiple drives on one disk. So that's, based on our requirement, we distribute that in Windows. That is how we configure the Windows drives for SAP server or a database server. Based on the space, and like we can ask, why have they attached two disks? One is 150 GB, one is 200 GB. Instead, they could have gone with 350 GB disk. The reason for having separate multiple disks is, if you take a disk like a standard disk, there will be something like I/O speed. That is something. What is I/O speed is how speed data can be written to the disk, and how speed data can be written can be read from this disk. That is something like we call it as IOPS. It's like IOPS, input output speed. Okay, it's like it will be like something like 2000 KB per second or something. So if I have one disk where all drives resides, so I mean if you are doing some parallel processing, one process is accessing C drive, one process is accessing D drive. So what happens is in the background it all goes and hits the same disk. So my total speed will be limited to input output will be limited to 2 Mbps only per second. Instead, if I have multiple disks, if I have one disk 1 and if I have disk 2, I/O speed is same, like I/O PS is same 2000 kbps. So I have C drive on disk 1, D drive on disk 2. So if process access, there are two processes running. One process is writing to C drive, one process is writing to D drive. Now what happens is each process gets individual speed of 2 Mbps per second. So even the first process writes at 2 Mbps, the second process writes at 2 Mbps because it's writing to separate disk. In the first case, since both writes to the same disk, like it will be one process will be having only like 1 Mbps, another process will be having 1 Mbps. So that's the reason when they build a server, they build the server with multiple disks to increase the I/O speed. But in our laptops, we don't have that much requirement, so we have only like one hard drive attached to it. So this is the Windows concept. When coming to Linux, the same concept applies. The physical disk is the same. When you take a physical disk provided by any hardware vendor, that doesn't matter. It has to be used in Linux or Windows, anything. So they provide this. So in Linux also we attach like maybe based on our requirement. If we want like 1 TB space, we might go with 500 GB hard disk, something like that. In Windows, we saw that using the Windows management. Here in Linux, we can see it using okay. So if you see this, this LSS CSI, this is the command. So if you see this, there are two disks attached to this VM. Let me log into another VM and see how many disks are there. So in this, they have attached 3 disks. Because this is since this is a database server, it requires more space. So they have attached 3 disks. In this, they have attached only 2 disks. So let's take this case. There are 2 disks attached. So similar to where in Windows we have drive concept, where 2 disks can be split into multiple number of drives like C, D, E, F. In Linux, there is no drive. There is something called mount points. So if you do a df-h this command, you see these /SAP-MNT/USR SAP. So these are all called mounts. So this is similar to drives in Windows. So for each mount, we allocate space. Like this mount has like 50 GB space. This mount has like 120 GB space. This mount has 40 GB space. So this is something similar to drives in Windows. In Linux, we call it as mounts. So we based on the disk based on the disk size attached, we can use like if I like 1 TB disk, I'll distribute like this. For this mount, I'll distribute 100 GB. This mount, I'll distribute 200 GB, something like that. So this is the concept of mounts and disk. So far, any questions?
No. No, it's clear.
Okay. Let's not get into the details like how you allocate a space and all. That's all like advanced Linux commands. So it's not required for now. Like how you Windows, it's simple. We can just easily partition and using command line GUI. But Linux, you have to, everything has to be done on a command line. So let's not get into the detail. Just understand for now. These mounts are something like we allocate a fixed amount of space. Okay, and
Okay.
yeah, then let's get to the next topic. File system mount points concept, navigating SAP directory structure. Okay. Okay, then maybe we'll go to the directory structure. See, directory structure is like when in any for SAP installation, all installations will be I see. In Windows, we have something like all we install software by into your C program files, something like that. In Windows, in SAP, we install by default. All installation will be done under USR SAP. If it is Windows, on Windows, we can choose the directory drive. Since C drive is usually used by operating system, what we do is we usually go to not choose C drive. We go with any other drive like D, E, wherever there is we have allocated space. We choose the E drive and we use this path. Windows, it will be something like I'll give an example. USR SAP. Under this only we install it. Similarly, when you come to Linux, we create a mount called USR SAP. And we install SAP under this mount. Sorry. Under USR SAP, all installations should go by default. We can't change it, but it's customary. We have to. It's advisable to use the same USR SAP. So if you see, this is where we install. So when we install a system name SOD, I'm installing a system name SOD. So where I will install is I'll install under USR SAP SOD. If I want to install another system SOJ on the same server, I'll then install under USR SAP SOJ. This is called the home directory. USR SAP, the 3-character SID, that is called the home directory. Okay. So whatever installations will be going under this path. So let's get into one detail. We're going to use SAP SOD and see what is there inside. I think the TADM they would have explained it very well. The TADM has some, I think that has some old. Now they've changed the format. Earlier it used to be something like, if you see, it is SOG. So this for older versions. Okay, Okay, let's take the example of user SAP SOD. Within SOD, there will be subdirectories created. One is for you, the other day you learned about the message server, NQ server, right? So for message server, NQ server, a folder would be created with the format ASCS and some number, 2-digit number. The 2 digits is called the instance number. Similarly, for the web dispatcher, the ABAP server, there will be a folder created called and 2 digits. You can the reason to have this name. This might be confused. Why they have this name was DVB MG. Yes, like when SAP. I think the naming convention this came from the type of work process in this. If we see D is for dispatcher, V is for update work process, E is for NQ work process, B is for background. D is for dialog work process, V is for update, E NQ, B background, M is message server, G is gateway server, S is spool. So these are the work process types you read, right? What are the different work process type? This is something like they've taken one character from each work process type and formed this directory structure. This was like done like years back. SAP had this naming convention and they're still following it. Now they have separated the message server from here, but still they're following this name. So this is the directory structure you see ASCS or DVM folder. This is for older versions. Now for newer versions, they have changed slightly. You will have ASCS 2 digits. Don't have any more this naming. They replaced it with D and 2 digits. In newer installation, you see only this kind of directory structure. The ACS will be like having where the NQ server service and message server is running, and D will be where D01, 02, D03 something where the application server runs. This is for ABAP. NetWeaver AS ABAP. For AS Java, how it would be is be having SCS and J. You will see folder something like SCS instance number and J instance number. I think I can show you the Java. There's a Java instance here as well. Okay, if you see here, this AACS, this is an ABAP system. SOD is ABAP net, application server. So you see the directories such as AACS and DV, this number. This SOJ is a Java system. So you see it as J03 and SCS. So this is the how SAP follows the directory structure. So this is between ABAP and Java. Let's get into the ABAP system and see what is inside each directory. So if you go into any like this DVM, you'll be having multiple directories. So the just I will tell what are the important directories you have to remember. With I'm taking example of here. The important directory says you have the things you have to remember exe directory, work directory. Okay, these two are important directories you have to remember. So exe directory is where you have the binary executables. And work directory is where the SAP writes logs here. In our like work process logs to this location. Binaries is some in SAP term we call it as SAP kernel. It's like you would have learned about C kernel, C++ kernel. Kernel is what is called the core binaries which interacts with the hardware. So kernel files is one which interact between how when application passes some commands, this kernel files or binaries converts it to be in a format that can be interacted with the hardware, CPU, RAM, something. So this is called binaries. So it resides under exe folder. And you'll see a lot of files. These are all binary files, or we call it as SAP kernel. So SAP releases these binaries for each and every operating system. For Linux, they release separate files. For Windows, they release separate files. For HP Unix, they release separate files. So these binaries will be, they are OS dependent. Going to work directory, you will be seeing all multiple files. They're all log files. So these are all called log files. For each work process, there will be one log file. They use the number you see W5. I'll just log into SAP and show you. So if you see the work process here, right? So for each and every work process, there will be a corresponding log. I'll just filter. If you see here, okay, just see from here for now. For this is the work process number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So for 0 work process, there will be one log file dev_w0. So this work process 1 will write to this file dev_w1. This similarly, based on the numbers, it will be writing to a particular file. Also, if you see, there is something called .volt. There is something called dev_w1, dev_w1.volt. What happens? What is this old file is when we restart SAP, when we start and stop SAP, what SAP does is it will it would have been writing the files, logs to this file. When we restart SAP, it will rename it dev_w1. It will copy to _volt and it will start writing for fresh from this in this file. So this file contains logs only from when SAP was started. So when you start, like if you start SAP at 9 o'clock today, this file will be having data only from 9 o'clock whenever SAP was started. And when SAP was, if we shutting down at 12 o'clock, till 12 o'clock, or 12 o'clock, what happens is it copies this file and rename it as .old and start writes to a new file dev_w1. And the existing .old file will be deleted. So that's how it writes the logs. So this is one important directory how to remember. So everything like all types of work process writes to this work directory. Anything like spool, anything. So there will be multiple, not only work process logs, there will be multiple logs. Once maybe you start working on it, maybe you can learn in detail about that. So this is for what is there, and the main directory is under USR SAP. There's one more directory which is used by SAP installation, that is called /SAP MNT. We call SAP mount. So under SAP mount, similarly, you will see different SIDs. For each system, it will create one directory here as well. So we call this as work directory, USR SAP SID work directory. And this mount directory will be SAP MNT /SAP MNT.